All right, looks like we have almost a quorum on this stormy night.
Not storming yet, Robert. It's not even snowing yet.
I was going to go out and put my moon cream on.
Just wait till the morning.
It's 7 now. Let's wait another minute.
Good day.
Ed,
Okay.
okay, should we get started?
Yes.
So first agenda item, as always, is the review and approval of previous meetings minutes. In this case, the January 27th. Ken sent it out. Incidentally, I don't know how wide the distribution was, but Ken decided, having to go to Pennsylvania for a family event tomorrow, they were going to start, as the groups always do, an outrageous hour in the morning.
Yes.
They decided to go tonight, and Ken wasn't sure the connectivity as they were driving down would be good
Oh,
enough
dear
for him to
Lord.
be on.
I've never met people who drive at the hours that family drives at. Anyhow,
make the
I
best-
move we approve the driver's minutes.
Okay,
Indeed.
So I have a question. The minutes I got, he had a question mark where he didn't have the name, and I think it was for one of the grants, Valerie, that you were, was that ever corrected? Because that's the only minutes that I received. So if that was the final minutes, then I'm fine with it.
I did send in that correction. So
Okay.
why don't we approve it
As corrected.
as corrected?
Okay.
Okay, all those in favor?
Second, yeah.
Aye.
Right, I'm
Aye.
sorry.
Okay. Aye.
Nays and abstentions? Thank you. Approved unanimously. Welcome, Pia. Okay, there's been lots of discussion, it being the season for this kind of financial discussion about funding and grants and general funding approaches. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to Valerie, who has done a yo woman's job.
Yes.
Putting this together.
Thank you. Yes, so I think since the last time, well, at least the last time the master plan steering committee met, we talked about trying to create discrete tasks for multiple consultants to come in and work on. Since then, two opportunities have kind of come up that have led us to discuss the potential for one consultant to come in and do the whole thing. So that is continuing to look at whether there may be an opportunity through ARPA and also through a state capital grant called Housing Choice. So both of these are options. We'll have to continue discussing with the town administrator whether this kind of project could be funded through ARPA and what size requests we might be making. But so I think that's good news that it is possible to apply for a grant that would potentially, if we did receive it, provide us with enough funding to get one team on board and to really be able to speak to how our different chapters kind of cross over and intersect. So that's, I think that's the good news. No bad news, actually. So we went and spoke with advisory on Tuesday, and it seemed actually very positive in terms of the need for master planning and master plan implementation. Their comments were more on kind of the mechanisms for how we might make that type of request. So I had requested $30,000 just as kind of a town match for future grants to help us be more competitive with receiving a grant. I did that through the planning board budget, and it sounds like it's preferred to do that through an article. So that I believe will be the way that we move forward with that. So if there are any questions about this approach or about timing, I think timing definitely is interesting here. With the housing choice grant, if that's the way we choose to go, it means that we would not be applying until June and likely not hearing back either way, positive or negative, until early fall. So that would kind of delay what we do for the next few months, I believe. But we can always talk more about that, and it may be possible to find other funding to kind of cover us in the meantime, so that we're not losing time. But I really think that it is preferable to be able to find one consultant. So I hope that you view this as a step in the right direction, even if it takes a little bit more time.
And would that article be this town meeting coming up?
Yes, that's correct.
They would
Yes.
allow-
You won't see the money until July 1st.
That's fine. Okay. All right.
One
Have you talked to
advantage of it-
Dawn about
Yes.
the housing choice grants?
Yes. So he has generously offered to help review what the grant parameters are, and review it with the mind toward what we may be able to get possibly through ARPA. We don't want to disqualify ourselves for a state grant if it's clear that there's another funding mechanism that can provide us the same amount of money. And obviously it's preferable for the town that if we can get another grant to save those ARPA funds for other issues, other things that we need desperately. So.
During our conversation with the advisory committee, there was some conversation about the relative advantages of either going with an increase to the planning department budget versus having a separate article. And I think this is probably a good choice to go with a separate article. As Brian had suggested, this gives us the possibility of making a presentation since we do have an article in the game. So that's something that I think we could view as an engagement opportunity to a pretty broad audience by explaining the background of this very briefly and where we're going, where we've been, and why we're looking for this article.
And I think it's preference of you giving the presentation at town meeting rather than planning board.
Oh, don't worry.
No, I'm just pointing it out.
No, I think, no, I'm not being sarcastic. I think
No,
it's
no,
important
I
that
just said it's probably a better
folks who are
idea.
doing it do it.
Yeah, it's a better
Good.
idea.
Okay. Hate to stick you with it again, Valerie, but update on the business district assessment, which seems to be moving along, although we haven't been directly involved.
Yes, right. So this is the business district assessment and market analysis. We have an approved scope of work for that grant, and the consultant has been doing quite a bit of background research. So she's been, pulling assessors data for the main business district and really starting to get a feel for the players in Bolton. And part of that as well has been some effort to get together a focus group of business owners or business district landowners or commercial real estate agents. So I'm working right now to try to pull together a group of 3 to 5 business people to have one focus group interview, and then to find 1 or 2 active commercial real estate agents to have a more informal, one-on-one interview with the consultant. So I've reached out to so far the owner of the Country Cupboard is going to be able to participate, as is the owner of Condyne, who's at 580 Main, who owns the business park there. I've also reached out to Bolton Global Capital, Bolton Bean and 626 Main Street, and the owner of 563 Main Street, the Bolton Corners, across from the vet clinic. And a few others, just to try to pull together some of the larger business owners and landlords, I guess, in Bolton. So if you have anyone else that you think may be excited to participate in this type of focus group, that would be great to hear that, or to get some contact info for some more folks. We're hoping to do this next week, so via Zoom. So hopefully I'll get a little bit more of a response, but so far I have 2 business owners. And the next steps are, after this, to work a little bit more on a town-wide survey of residents, and then also to figure out what our trade area is. So you can do a trade area either kind of a few miles out, 3 to 5 miles out as the crow flies, or you can really do, how far can you get in 15 minutes or 20 minutes via car. So trying to figure out which of those 2 options might be best. So she'll be providing a little bit more direction as far as that goes.
So Valerie, you presently have 2 business owners who have agreed to do this. Have you
Yes.
reached out to your real estate people
Yes.
and you've got them on board?
No.
Okay.
I've only been able to reach out 1 or 2 times. Sometimes these things take a little bit more, and it's also building relationships. So I haven't really had the opportunity to reach out to a lot of business owners. So I'm certainly not a familiar name, which makes things a little bit more difficult.
Is there any way we can help in that respect? I mean,
I think if you know anyone personally that you may want to connect me with, kind of do a soft introduction, that would certainly be useful. It'd be interesting to get other business owners as well, even outside of that main business district. So I reached out to the owner of the old Cracker Barrel building to see if she may be interested. Maybe the owner of Fotini's could be interesting, or Classic Pizza, just other individuals who might be able to give us kind of a sense of what obstacles are to doing business in Bolton. So if you have any ideas, that'd be great.
well, I can help you with Dr. David across from Randy's, the vet place.
Okay.
Since
Great.
she and her husband own that building and have a very good perspective on the type of business and the business environment for a range of businesses.
They own which building?
Freddie's
The vet
Um,
clinic? Or
they own the building, the main building where Clinton Savings used to be across the
Used to
street.
call Frida's building.
The
Oh, yeah.
Freddie's building, or we call it Freddie's
Great.
building,
Yeah, Freddie's
the
building.
big building. Across from the
What
vet.
about Freddie Freitas?
Wonderful.
Does anybody know him enough to ask him if he would be interested?
Well,
He
is
hasn't-
He's not involved anymore, to the best of my knowledge.
No,
Well, he
might-
owns the lot around that building.
Yeah, he does.
That's true, yeah.
I know
But he's
Freddie.
been traveling, well, I don't know, he was. I'm not, I don't know. The last time I saw him, he was in town and out of town a lot. So,
Right.
It would just be interesting to know how he envisions that property, and if, he has any
Okay.
plans.
All right.
is Dr. David Bill David?
No,
The woman, right?
it's, yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
But I'll tell you what, I'll get her contact information to you and I'll give her a call. I got to know her very well with Lions Club, among other things.
Frank Patterson owned the old country store.
Yes.
Okay.
What about the woman who owns the Quilted Crow, and she lives on
55.
Hudson Road?
Yeah,
I think we could find her name.
Oh, we
I
know her
know.
personally.
Yeah,
okay.
I instead of reaching out to individual businesses within 626 Main Street, I just went right for Frank Patterson, just thinking that
Right.
as someone who also leases all those
Right.
the business spaces, he may have a broader perspective, but certainly I should reach out to her as well.
Has
That's a good
Frank been
idea.
reachable? Has Frank been
Um,
reachable?
Not so far.
Okay.
But we'll see. I'll reach out again tomorrow. I know it's been, the thing is, they all operate their own businesses. They're all extremely busy people. So it's certainly difficult. But I emailed him, I followed up with him today, and I emailed his sons as well to see if they could kind of press the issue.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what about the Davis Bolton Orchard people? I mean, a lot of times I think when I hear people talk about things they want in town, I'm always leery of them considering what it would do to existing successful long-term businesses that have been here, i.e. Bolton Orchards. When everyone says we want a Trader Joe's, I mean, we're never
have
gonna get
you
a Trader.
reached, yeah, have you reached out to Sarah or Joel at Bolton Orchard?
I haven't because we were thinking the first round folks would be within that main business district, but I should, I'm already starting to kind of try to pull from a broader range. So I should definitely reach out to Bolton Orchards. That's a good idea.
I think that would be good because, eventually I do think we will be thinking about more business at that end of town. I mean, the Forbush Green area. And it would be good to at least have some kind of contact with Bolton Orchards. They, on
Not Davis out of the
occasion,
game.
they've really tried to accommodate what they think the town wanted. When the town said they wanted more coffee shops, they put in a Red Barn Coffee. When people said they wanted more ice cream shops, they put in an ice cream thing. So they do listen to the Bolton social media chatter.
And they also do a huge amount for the town. They do a lot for
do.
COA. They deliver groceries for me to some of my seniors. They're amazing
Yeah.
people.
Yeah.
They're good people.
Would it help to have a wish list from you, Valerie? And then the bunch of us try to contribute contact names and maybe some degree of familiarity with those people? Would
Yeah,
that be helpful?
I could definitely send out kind of the list of, I believe I do have contact information. It's really, I'm just not a familiar name to come into your inbox. So I think it's just a hard recognition thing. So if there's anyone in particular that you may know personally, I think that it's really that personal connection that would be most helpful.
Right. So based on your
Yeah.
list, we can get
Yeah.
back to you and say, I met the guy once, or he's a great friend or something. We get some idea
Sure,
of where the best approach would be.
sure.
All
Yeah, I
right.
can email out the list of people I have already
Right.
been in contact with. Yeah.
Okay. Anything more on that? And your timetable at this point is to bring together that little focus group. What do you see going beyond that?
So the focus groups hopefully will be as soon as next week, because we're still trying to stick to this timeline of being done by June. After that, it's really going to be a discussion with kind of that core grant team. So Mark, Eric Nealand, Bob and Brian, kind of figuring out a little bit more about what the trade area should be and a few other specific questions that the consultant has. So kind of getting that group back together and kind of reviewing some of those issues. And then we'll hopefully grab the draft survey questions so that I can give those to other groups as well. I know the Economic Development Committee was very interested in knowing what types of questions are going to be asked, how they'll be asked, and how we'll get the survey out. So you'll definitely be hearing more as I get more info.
Good. Yeah, well, I'm sure we'll all be interested in those survey questions as
Yes.
well. Are they,
Yes.
how are they structured? I mean, they're structuring the survey by starting out with the goals of the survey and backing out the questions?
What'd you say?
Are
Sorry.
they structuring the survey in a way that they establish goals and objectives of the survey and then back out questions that they'll use to get there?
I believe so, yes. So I had a very good discussion with the consultant about a week or two ago. We spoke for over an hour, just really looking at a map of Bolton and kind of zooming into specific areas, and really she was getting a sense of the town, but also specifically what I don't know and what questions I just can't answer. So we're also looking at kind of some more of that local knowledge as well, included in the survey. Items such as, you know, where do Bolton residents go to buy X product, you know? So things like that, I just can't quite, I don't know that. So that's kind of how she's also going to be kind of backing into, you know, how far away are we really pulling from? What is the trade area going to look like?
So it's interesting, depending on where you live in Bolton, is the
Mhm.
direction you go.
Yeah, so she was saying that if we do a trade area by distance, so how far you can get in 10 minutes or 15 minutes, what you're going to get is kind of all these little fingers going out from all the different directions around Bolton. So it'll be a funny looking map, but it may be more interesting because, you know, 10 minutes on 495 can get you to a lot of different places. 10 minutes down west on 117 is a whole other story too.
Right.
So I'm leaning towards that idea of having those fingers kind of moving around rather than just doing a 3 to 5 mile as the crow flies around Bolton.
One of the things that surprised us when we moved to Bolton 40 years ago, having lived in Boston for some time, when we talked about the city, it was Boston. We kept talking about the city, and it crossed purposes with everybody in Bolton for whom Worcester was the city,
Right. Very true.
suggesting that we actually are in the proper county.
Yes.
Okay, moving on to an interesting discussion and a set of activities actually that we're having with the land use task group. Basically, it established 2 meetings ago that we wanted to start thinking about the way that we would evaluate land on a regional basis rather than trying to look at the whole town simultaneously, and think about how we would determine the potential uses for land ownership, et cetera, the limitations to it, and decided the best way we could do this, as I think we mentioned in our last meeting, was to look at a more focused area and develop a pilot. So we could take a look at an area of particular interest now, and then with the lessons learned about developing a process, improving or not proving or amending that process. Hold on just a moment, please. Okay, thank you. Amending that process, go on and look at other areas, but we really wanted to look at a particular area that was, you know, an area of particular interest at this point. So we've done a couple of things. First of all, put together a protocol process about how we would go about doing this. Selected the particular area, as I believe we've mentioned before, which is basically a large quadrangle that in the northeast corner is the intersection of 495 and 117, goes down through 580 Main Street, but all the way down to West Berlin Road, and then all the way over to Wattaquatic along Main Street. Obviously ignoring to some degree the residences in the western end of that quadrangle. And having done that, we've put together, as I mentioned, a process protocol. I've distributed that a couple of days ago to the land use group. I've gotten comments back on that. I'll distribute that with the comments incorporated to this group. But Valerie, you want to talk a little bit about the overall approach to mapping, which is a very critical part of this.
Sure. Unfortunately, I was just looking for it and I don't have maps to share. I can't connect to the shared drives at the town hall, which would help kind of explain what we're doing here. But looking at basically a lot of the soft constraints as well as the harder constraints. So looking at for these parcels, what the zoning is, what the buffers are from wetlands, where the existing well protection areas are, as well as looking a little bit more at what areas we might want to protect more because they may have more conservation value. So thinking about important soils, or also through the Apple Country Municipal Vulnerability Preparedness Project, we have this map down to a pixelated level of town of which areas are more vulnerable to development than others. So you can kind of overlay all these different layers and kind of figure out which spots on a parcel cannot be developed because of very hard constraints, which ones are important to conserve because of their value as primary soils, or because they're forested and they may be very helpful in terms of carbon sequestration, or they may have an agricultural preservation restriction or conservation restriction. And then thinking more about what it means to have frontage and access from a road. So really thinking about what can be developed on a site, which is the kind of the first step, because then Bob had come up with a draft of kind of how to evaluate parcels moving forward, and thinking a little bit more about, okay, if we can develop this site, how should it be developed? Which is kind of the second part of the question.
And development in this context is in the very broadest sense. It doesn't
Yes.
necessarily mean commercial development, residential development. It can also mean all of the other aspects of development associated with the community and bringing the community together. So, that parks and recreation, community center, schools, all the rest of that stuff. The idea being that we need to look, particularly in this area, of the availability of town land and what could be done with limitations of wetland and soils and so forth, as well as the built environment, as they say. But take into consideration the possibility of doing things in areas that are appropriate for that particular activity or structure, and allowing other higher priority things to occur where they either are or could have been that would have a better and higher use. Case in point, one of the things that becomes very evident when you look at the EPA public water supply overlays of the maps is that we have limitations now because public water supplies have been put in, and the zone 1 and zone 2 extensions gotten to the point where it has limited a number of things that, well, frankly, anybody can do, the town and otherwise. And one of the things that we may want to consider moving forward, definitely consider moving forward, is when a development is put together that requires a public water supply, what are the implications of the lots around it? Are you excluding possible uses of that land as a result of the public water supply? And could that public water supply be moved to some other place? For instance, in what constitutes wetlands now, which is a compatible use of wetlands areas, as has been proven by Lancaster, which uses Bolton wetlands for their well field. But that basically the idea was, in a very, very broad sense, the best and highest use, and how could other uses be reallocated to another area which particularly accommodates them as opposed to the best and highest use. Kia, you mentioned in chat that you have those maps that were displayed. You're muted. Okay.
I don't have all of them. I was trying to take a few screenshots when Rebecca was speaking. So I just, if you want to see 3 representative maps, like what she was talking about, I have 3 screenshots you could look at.
Is this the old ArcServe GIS, Valerie?
Yes, it's sort of more sophisticated than GIS, but yeah.
Okay, all right.
It is, it's ArcGIS, yeah.
So can you share your screen? And Valerie, do you have to authorize it?
I think I did. I think you're able to now.
Okay.
All right, let's see. Do you see anything? I don't.
That's it.
Oh, wait, I can go under files, I guess. I have 2 monitors. I'm just trying to get to that. It gives me a big warning. Hold on. All right, let's try. All right. This is really strange.
Don't sweat it, Kia.
Yeah, forget it. It's just giving me a big warning dot. I don't know if that means I'm not allowed.
Whatever.
Okay, so,
It's okay.
but I think, in a number of the reports, not the least of which was the open space and recreation master plan that was put together, a number of those overlays, as well as the 2 more recent reports that have put together have them. But the advantage of this is the increasing accuracy and the ability to overlay specific combinations of limitations or opportunities, which I think has been very, very useful. While we're here, let me share my screen and I'll just briefly run through the protocol. Can you see that?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so it's a couple of parts, there's a narrative that explains it, but basically characterize the area of study, look at the boundary, and the boundary is what I just explained. Identify all the parcels and the ownership associated with them. Obviously the zoning associated with it, which is not necessarily consistent with parcel boundaries. Look at the various activities that are currently going on. A number of them are going on in that area and are planned, as is the case of 580. Look at the regulatory limits for wetlands, riverfront areas, and public water supplies, et cetera. And then take a look at the topography. And the topography is not by any means extreme in this area, although we do have significant lowlands and wetlands. Identify all the potential uses. And so basically you have a board of opportunity here, things that potentially could go in with community facilities, recreational facilities, infrastructure, which we have discussed specifically with respect to water, town facilities, senior housing we already have, but there are other opportunities, school facilities, and then one of the interesting things is a more creative approach to vehicular and pedestrian access. There may be some innovative things that don't currently present themselves, but once you have all the overlays in place, may ultimately resolve that and provide, some interesting opportunities. And then assign a priority to each of the potential uses, cross that with the viability of that use in a particular area. And then this is where a miracle occurs. And put together what amounts to a matrix that suggests what the best and highest use is of each one of these, understanding that there may be multiple potential uses and multiple potential uses that actually can be situated or assigned that particular area based on environment, ownership, et cetera, and then come up with that matrix and suggestions of a recommendation for the best way that particular area could be defined. Now, we're not limiting it to town land or commercially owned land or developed land or underdeveloped land. It's all land, so that we can step back and rather than react to a situation, use it as a mechanism for planning. And the intention here is not so much to do the planning for the planning board, which I hope they buy into here, but provide a protocol with lessons learned and actually demonstrate its appropriateness and success in one area that is relatively complicated, and show that that could be used as a pilot for doing the same sort of thing throughout the town. So it would serve both as providing a reasonable assessment of the use of this, but at the same time, producing to some degree a useful product. Anyway, I will now unshare, but I will send this around. I'd be very interested in additional comments on it. It's a bit of a stretch, but I think ultimately this is a good way of getting to engage the public. This is certainly part of this. Put together the basics and then bring together constituents, potential and actual stakeholders, and have them review and basically act as a charrette to come up with innovative ideas that in many cases none of us would have thought of, or maybe.
Mhm.
Anyway, that's where we are with respect to that.
All right.
So that's all I have. One comment I would like to make, we're waiting on the economic development study. We're waiting on grants and so forth, but in the very near future, we will come up with additional things that in the background we can do to support moving on. And I'm sure we can do things that will ultimately help either multiple consultants or one individual overviewing consultant. So, any other thoughts? Comments?
Not right now.
If not, thank you very much.
Okay.
Do I hear a motion
I move that we adjourn this meeting.
and a second?
Second.
Obviously, there will not be any discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you all.
Thanks, Valerie.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
everyone.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Valerie.
Good night.
Good night.
Have a good night.
You too.
Mhm.